this is really a distinguished panel. And I'm quite excited about, where our discussions will lead us.
Hi, everyone. My name is Crystal Lee Crane. I don't mind folks not calling me Dr. Crane. You can just call me Crystal Lee. I teach politics and sociology here at the College of Alameda at Cal State University East Bay, or Hayward, whatever your preference is, and also at De Anza College in Cupertino. I come to this conversation as an educator, but as an activist. And just a little heads up to folks, I will be representing College of Alameda, the district, and the Bay at the White House on Thursday. And so definitely keep that in mind. I will be going to a White House briefing on Thursday looking at the state of Black LGBT America and looking at the importance of creating intersectional policy. And so I come to this panel with that perspective in mind. Thank you.
Hello all, my name is Captain Johnny Davis of the Oakland Police Department. You can call me Johnny. I was invited here by Ms. Smith. She thought that the police department could provide some information to the conversation about the state of African Americans within law enforcement within the city of Oakland. I grew up initially in Detroit, Michigan. I arrived here in California in 1981 when I was fresh out of high school when a lot of you weren't born. I was stationed aboard the old Naval Air Station Alameda and had occasion to attend college here, took a few classes while I was in the military, and then when it was time to get out of the military, I was hired at the Oakland Police Department and rose to my current rank of captain. In my current position, I'm the commander of the Criminal Investigations Division of the Oakland Police Department. That encompasses every type of investigation that the police department does except for internal affairs and traffic. So personnel under my command investigate homicide, robbery, burglary, auto theft, sexual assault, domestic violence, any crime that occurs, my division investigates it. I've been on the police department for 28 years and I'm eligible to retire in about 7 months if I should decide to do so. I'll turn 50 in September. I am currently married. I have 3 children. My oldest is 25 in the Navy. I have a daughter, 23, and I have an 8-year-old daughter due to a second marriage. And I reside here and happy to be here today. Thank you.
Good afternoon, young people. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Ernie Bonner. I'm an MD, JD. And it's really a great pleasure to be here. And I want to encourage all of you to start thinking globally, not locally. This is a great time to be young. There's a lot of opportunity for you. Being a student now probably is probably greater now than I've ever seen before. The federal government, particularly through the Department of Defense, is doing everything it can to establish liaisons with other countries, particularly countries in Africa. And the government now recognizes that the easiest way to do that is through people of color. I can give you I was just in a meeting about a year ago with former Ambassador Andrew Young and another group of people from the National Medical Association. We were there with a delegation from the South Sudan, which is the newest country on the globe. And we were trying to develop some strategies to assist them in developing their healthcare system. And one thing that became painfully clear while we were sitting there is one of the problems that a lot of African nations have, as the South Sudan, is just clean water, electrical power. We can't even raise money right now to send them an MRI because they get the MRI, they don't have anybody that can maintain it. or repair it. It's a problem getting spare parts. So, and I say all of this to say that you young people, if there were one of you here right now that had the wherewithal to put together a team to just build a water plant or an engineer or an electrical plant, I could get you a job right now paying you about $500,000 a year.
Hello, everyone. I appreciate everyone coming out today. I know it's the lunch hour, so it definitely takes the motivated individuals to be here at this time. My name is Jason Outlaw. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I'm considered an early career clinical psychologist as well, which means that it wasn't too long ago that I was in your seats as well, completing my degree. I wear a couple of different hats. I do have a private practice in San Leandro, so I primarily work with families and individuals and couples on a whole host of different presenting problems. I also work for a university. I'm an assistant dean of the College of Social Sciences as well. In addition, I'm a father and a husband as well. So I look forward to having this conversation with everyone today. Hopefully we'll get some good questions and get some good dialogue going on today. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Jody Campbell, born and raised in Oakland, California. Went to Laney Community College, graduated from that institution to UC Davis, where I pursued a degree in African American and African Studies, as well as sociology. From there, I went to San Francisco State University to study under Dr. Wade Nobles at the College of Ethnic Studies there, and right back to my hometown of Oakland, California, where I teach now at Laney Community College. One of the first jobs that I got as a college instructor was here at College of Alameda, where I taught AFRAM 5, which is history of the black family, one class that I take a tremendous amount of pride in, because in all that process of acquiring education, knowledge, and information at these various institutions, I also served as a social worker for 5 years for the county of Alameda. So I remember having our first lunch when I first met Miss Sharon Smith. She asked me, she said, well, what are you going to do, young man? Are you going to be a teacher, or are you going to be a social worker? So that has always resonated with me. And just last year, I decided to resign from the field of active social work, if you will, and to devote all my times and energies to teaching and the instruction. So again, thank you for having us, and I'm excited to get this panel started. Thank you.
My name is Dr. Rose Lewis. I'm a plastic surgeon. I'm retired, so don't anybody ask me to do anything at the end of this conference. Ms. Smith asked me to talk to you a little bit about cosmetic surgery, and I will very briefly, but the other thing that we thought I should talk to you about was your EQ. You know, like you have an IQ, your intelligence quotient, your EQ is your emotional quotient, and it's how you deal with the world. So I'll be happy to kind of go over some of those things when we actually have the panel.
So where we may want to start is, let's start with our health. How are we? Are we healthy?
Healthcare disparities is a problem that we face as people of color. It means that whenever you get sick, go to the emergency room, get hospitalized, you're likely to get less care than, for example, Caucasians in this country. In fact, that is the comparison that healthcare disparities are usually assessed by. What is the healthcare that is delivered to Caucasians versus other individuals or other groups? And we can see that there is a real problem. There have been numerous studies that have shown that if you are a person of color, and if you come from a lower socioeconomic background, then you are likely to be victimized by less care than your Caucasian counterpart. Now, the group that has been most often, the groups that have been most often compared have been African Americans versus Caucasians. And it doesn't, and really whenever you look at those groups, it doesn't even make much difference what your socioeconomic status is. It's mainly race. That means that even Captain Davis here, if he were to get injured in the line of duty, ended up in one of these emergency rooms, it's a good chance he wouldn't get the same care that a Caucasian captain would get. This is not my opinion, this is what the studies show. And I'll give you some examples. If you are African American and you have a stroke, you go to the emergency room, you have a higher likelihood of not being given the drug that would reverse the problem than a Caucasian. In fact, there's a 4-time higher incidence of death from stroke among African Americans than Caucasians. For diabetics, there's a 3.5 times greater incidence of amputations from diabetes for African Americans than Caucasians. For prostate cancer, there's a 2.5 times higher incidence of castration as the treatment of that problem for African Americans than it is for Caucasians. But these are just some of the problems. Those problems need to be remedied somehow. First thing that you have to do is just recognize that there's a problem. I would encourage all of you to make sure that you do as much as possible to take charge of your personal health, to encourage your family members to do the same. And remember that it's always the squeaky wheel that gets the oil. So irrespective of which healthcare facility you go to get your treatment, you make sure that you're one that asks questions. If you have relatives that have strokes, they have diabetes and got sores on their feet or their legs, you ask that doctor, hey, doctor, can you do anything? The stroke just happened, for example, and you're there in the emergency room. Can my relative get that clot-busting drug? Same thing for a heart attack. If somebody has a sore on their foot, don't let the doctor just rush and cut that extremity off. Make sure that that person is seen by what you call an endovascular surgeon. Not a vascular surgeon, but an endovascular surgeon. You have to ask people, is there anything that can be done?
So I just wanted to piggyback on what Dr. Bonner said a second ago. I think in addition to the health disparities that we see, and I'm going to touch on mental health for a moment, I think we have a huge, and it continues to be this even today. There's a huge stigma in the African American community around seeking mental health services. So if you break your arm, for example, you know you need to go to a physician to get that addressed, right? Most people understand that. However, if you have some sort of relationship problem or you find yourself in some sort of depressive episode or anxiety or anything else that you experience, our people at increasing numbers decide to take care of it on their own, okay? And I'm not saying that the whole self-help field is bad, but I do want to encourage everyone to consider seeking a professional. And specifically, if you can seek someone who looks like you as well, who shares some of the same experiences that you do, that can be of great benefit. In my practice, I probably see about 50% African American and about 50% other, and I just see it on a daily basis that the other ethnicities are a bit more comfortable with the idea of seeing a mental health therapist. And I'm not sure exactly where this started, and I'm not going to hypothesize, but I will say that our people need to at least embrace the idea of seeing a mental health therapist as opposed to hoping that it goes away on their own or dealing with it on their own, so forth and so on.
Thank you.
I have
And
something to
you
add.
wanted to.
Oh, feel free to clap for him. Yeah. celebrate. There's something that I wanted to add to kind of connect the physical and mental health, but also bring in the community and environmental factors that impact health disparities. So one study that's happening, or that has happened, that a lot of folks are using to try to talk about health disparities in a social or political way is the ACE study. And the ACE study is Adverse Childhood Experiences. And so the ACE study doesn't just look at whether you have the right race or the right socioeconomic status to get the care. It also looks at the impact of community violence, the impact of neglect, the impact of actually participating or perpetuating violence, right? What that actually has to do with your mental and physical health. And it was a study, I believe, done with Kaiser, over 17,000 patients, and they found that folks who have higher rates of adverse childhood experiences also have higher rates of chronic disease later in life. And this was connected to race and socioeconomic status as well. One critique of that study is that they did not do a very good job at kind of breaking down what different communities actually experienced. But generally speaking, being able to look at our health is not just something as whether or not you feel good or if you think you're happy, right? But what have you experienced in your life, and understanding how that's going to impact you is going to allow you to make decisions about your career, about your relationships, about anything that you want to do. But if you have all the information, you're going to be able to make the right choices for yourself. And so that's ACE study, if folks want to take a look.
Thank you. And one more? Yes.
Yes, please. I'm going to get it fired up. I'm going to just call it like it is. One of the things we're looking at in terms of the disproportionate medical care service or medical services that the black community receives, first and foremost, is because of capitalism. When we say capitalism, what does that mean? That means that if you don't have capital, you won't receive services. The reason why I know this is one of the primary causes that black folks don't receive the same treatment as others is because we are disproportionately poor in this society. But as a graduate, doing my graduate work in Cuba, I had the opportunity to study the healthcare system there in a socialist system, right? A system that has significantly less capital overall as the United States of America. But when I looked at, and as W.E.B. Du Bois said much earlier, he said that this is, without question, a black society. So when I look at the healthcare services that these black folks were receiving, their services were far better than even the average American. Why? They have something that the Castro regime initiated in 1960 was a community doctor program. So what does that mean? That means for every 100 people in a given community, they have medical services, not over at Highland, not over at Kaiser, but right in their own community. Now, you think we couldn't do that here in America, one of the richest nations in the world? Okay, but we choose not to because of capitalism. With capitalism, everything has a price, even human life. So we'll start there. I'll stop there.
What this young brother said is largely true. But under this new Health Care Act, though, there will be community clinics. That is what is going on now. You can go over to 105th and MacArthur right now. You'll see Lifelong Clinic. It's a clinic. It's one of these federally qualified health care centers. And the Obamacare Act is encouraging practitioners to establish health care facilities in vulnerable areas to serve vulnerable populations and the underserved. So I think that as we go forward, a lot of what you said may soon disappear. Although there is going to be the whole healthcare system of managed care is based upon denying care. So that's what it tries to do in order to save money. But there's also an opportunity here for some practitioners and other business people, nurse practitioners, for example, physician's assistants, to develop a new kind of healthcare delivery scheme that is cost effective and hopefully something better than what we have now.
Thank you. Did anyone else want to get in on it? So when we look at the community, when we look at healthcare, and the socioeconomics of the black community, I imagine that a number of our young men, I know that, for example, at Laney, there is a program for expunging records. So some of our African-American males have some challenges with their records. And so, and what goes on with the African-American community and law enforcement. So I'm passing it over to Sergeant. Captain, please forgive me. The captain.
Yeah, I thank you. I feel honored here to be here before you today and amongst this distinguished panelists. I mean, we have educators, we have doctors, we have a lawyer, and you have lowly me, a policeman. But I gained my education in the city of Detroit. That's where I say my undergraduate took place at. Our master's has been gained in the streets of Oakland. I've policed the city of Oakland for 28 years. I've seen a lot. I've done a lot. And I want to tell you that it saddens me sometimes at the things that I have to see that comes out of the African-American community. I will tell you that the males sometimes shame me of the way they treat women. They have no qualms about putting their hands on a lady. They have no qualms about calling her out her name. And if she says something about it, then the man will deal with her, usually physically. I want to allude back to a report that I just read this morning. And these two individuals were taken into custody, two males were taken into custody because they broke into a woman's house, they beat her, they robbed her, they kidnapped her. We charged them with kidnapping, all because they felt disrespected. Now, what this disrespect was, I really couldn't discern from the report, but it couldn't have been that much. But anyway, these are the types of things that end up on a person's record that cannot be expunged because, for one, you're an adult. Once you become an adult, things that you do after the age of 18, they stick with you. And all of you in the room here, or most of you in the room, or most of you that attend this college are not too far beyond the age of 18. Things you did prior to 18 years old, they can be expunged in most cases. And I'll tell you how you can do that. If you're interested, you don't have to tell me anything about, I have this, I have that. Keep your hands down as far as that's concerned. I don't need any examples or anybody putting themselves out there. But the way you would do that is you go down to the Oakland Police Department and you'd ask for the form that we use. I forget the number of the form, but you just tell the clerk in the records division on the 3rd floor, say, I would like to have the form that's used to try to get my record sealed or expunged. You fill that record out and you take it over to the county courthouse and you take it to the district attorney's office. There's a clerk there that will take that form and process it for you, and it goes before a judge, and a judge will review that form to determine whether or not they will expunge this item from your record. Depending upon what it is, they will. I will say that they look favorably upon people that are trying to do things with their lives, and you don't have a litany of things that you've done. Like when I was 17, I stole a car. When I was 18, I broke into a house. When I was 17, again, I hit somebody. You can't have a litany of things and say that you're on the straight and narrow. You have to show by your actions that you want to succeed in life, that you want to not be exposed to the criminal justice system. Because as they said up here, the good doctor said that there was a, what do you call it, health disparity, is it? Well, it's also a term that I'll coin here now is legal disparity. You get the justice that you can pay for. All right, O.J. Simpson was able to be found not guilty of his case because he had a lot of money due to capitalism. He could pay for that. Unfortunately, in the African-American community, I see a lot of people that come to court with attorneys that barely know their name trying to defend their cases. I have an issue that I have to deal with that came out on the news, and I feel comfortable saying it now, that a few years ago, the news report alleges that the Oakland Police Department caused an individual to be convicted and placed in jail for 6 years for something that he didn't do. I'm not proud of having to say that. I'm not proud of having my department to be labeled as such, but I say that to say that had this individual had the proper capital, if you will, he would have gotten the justice that, you know, that O.J. Simpson got. The justice that he could afford to get, unfortunately for him, was just a public defender. But fortunately for him, there were groups out there that could take up his cause, and there was like an Innocence Project, I think, of San Francisco. They took up his cause and got him out of jail. But anyway, that's, I don't have a canned speech, but I just wanted to offer that to you. And if you have any particular questions about it, anything, I'm here as part of the panel, and thank you for having me. Now that's appreciated, because I don't often get hands at all. I really don't. But I appreciate it. Thank you.
I just wanted to follow up on what some of the things that Captain Davis has said. So this is my time to talk to you about your EQ, your emotional quotient. And this is primarily for the young people who are sitting here. You know, your IQ is how intelligent you are. And your EQ is your emotional, the way you deal with other people, and the way you deal with the world, and the way you view the world. And basically, for most people, if you have an average intelligence, you can do most things. You can be successful. It's easier if you have a really high IQ, because you can learn things much faster, but you can get pretty well up there with an average IQ. So you don't have to be brilliant to do most things. Even most professions, you don't have to be brilliant. But you do have to be able to get along with other people. It is very important that you get along with other people. And that you don't see everything that happens to you that's negative as being a personal offense. Like somebody dissed me. You know, you don't have to look at the world that way. And you have to look at things as failures being a chance for you to take them and make them learning experiences. Somebody like Colonel Sanders, who did Kentucky Fried Chicken, he had probably 16 or 17 failures before he actually got a success. He had a whole bunch of other businesses before he came to that chicken place, you know. So the thing is that you can actually turn a failure into something positive. And just because somebody tells you something and it offends you, you can't put it in your pity box and say, you know, I hate that person, he dislikes me, my boss doesn't like me, and that kind of thing. And I'll give you an example of something that happened to me. After I had finished my residency and I was getting my board exams, I had already taken the first half of the boards, which was the written part, and passed it. And then you have to take the oral exams. And another plastic surgeon I know had described the oral exams as being the diarrhea-provoking part of the exam. So it's very nerve-wracking. And so in order to get prepared, I actually signed up and paid a lot of money for a sort of pre-exam, where they teach you how to take the exam and how to pass the oral portion of the examination. And this cost me a lot of money, and I had to leave home and go stay in a hotel where they were giving it. And one of the things they did was they asked you to bring your cases, because they reviewed 8 different cases in different categories. And so I got my best cases, and I had thought I had done marvelously well. And so one of the things they do is they would give you a mock exam. And so you brought your cases with you. So I had my 8 little booklets. And when my turn came, I sat there, and the professor was there, and he started out with the first one. We got through that. He got to the second booklet, and he asked me a question. And it was the first question he asked me about this particular surgery that I had done, which I thought was a really brilliant case, because I had designed a procedure for a patient that corrected the problem he had. And the first question he asked me, I looked at him absolutely blank. I had no idea. I couldn't answer the question. And I mean, I had no idea of why he even asked me the question. And all he did was he took the book and he folded it up and he did this, slap, and he put it down on top of the stack of the other binders and folded them all up and handed them back to me. And he said, "Doctor, you aren't ready." And that was the end of my interview. Needless to say, I was pretty angry, but I didn't say anything. Instead, I got up and I left, and I went back to my hotel room. And I was pretty angry at that point, because I said, I paid all this money, and he didn't even let me finish my exam. But I sat down on the bed, and I thought, let me think about this. He said, "Doctor, you aren't ready." And I thought, what is this man trying to tell me? And I thought, why would he even ask me that question? So what I did, instead of being angry with him and saying, you know, this is somebody who dissed me, I have to put him in my pity box, I went back, and when I got back home, And I asked, because the case actually involved sort of orthopedic, so I went and asked one of the orthopedists, why wouldn't you take out this little bone fragment? And he said, and it was on somebody's knee. It was a patient who had an amputation, and he had a pressure sore on his amputation stump. And I had redesigned the procedure. I had actually taken down the amputation and made a flap out of the scraps of muscle that were left to cover the wound. And then I skin grafted the whole thing. So it was a very complicated procedure, and I designed it. So I thought I had done really fantastically. And I did the right thing instinctively, but I couldn't tell anybody why I had done it. And so when I asked the orthopedist, he answered my question. He said, if you took that out, you would destabilize the joint and he wouldn't be able to walk. So I did the right thing, but I didn't know it. And then I remembered that one of the things that my professor had said was, before you take the orals, you think about every single question they can possibly ask you, and you figure it out ahead of time so that you don't go in there unprepared and get startled because somebody asked you something that you have no idea what they're asking you about. And so instead of taking that negative, I turned it into a positive. And that's really what your emotional IQ has to be about. You have to look at the world not negatively and take every negative thing that happens to you as being that somebody dissed you, they insulted you, they don't like you. I mean, maybe they're actually just trying to help you, and maybe they're not. And even if they don't like you, that doesn't mean you still can't succeed. You just dismiss that person. If you want to get even with them, you get successful. You get to be their boss. And then you can do whatever you want. Then you'll have shown them, and you don't have to worry about what they had to say. So anyway, that's what I want to say about your EQ.
Thank you. There are many other areas that the panelists can talk about, but first we want to see if any of you have some questions. All right, Vanessa.
Thank you. So my question is about Mr. Dorner in Los Angeles, who recently passed, and in the villainization of him in the media. And I guess thinking about Mr. Dorner, thinking about the relationship between rage and complacency, and which one is more dangerous. And I know this is just scattered thoughts, but also comparing Mr. Dorner to Nat Turner, and what you all think about that.
Okay. Well, I'm sure it's...
Do I need to formulate my question better?
Well, I think that I could probably answer. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. Well,
could I have you go up to the microphone at the podium, Vanessa?
Yeah.
I think that I'll start first, since Mr. Dorner was formerly of my profession. If I understand you correctly, to my limited experience, like I said, I didn't study a lot of psychology and things like that. I just deal with people as they present themselves and try to treat them the best that I can. But I'll tell you that Mr. Dorner, to me, suffered from a rage, and I believe that rage was caused by his perceived mistreatment at the hands of the Los Angeles Police Department. And it may very well be true that he suffered these things. I mean, we're not perfect. They want police officers to be perfect all the time, but you have to remember, police officers are chosen from the members of the human race, and there are no humans out here that are perfect. So, I mean, I say it's rage, but if somebody else cares to expound on it, I appreciate it.
Can you all hear me? Okay. Well, the first thing I want to say is when we come from a psychological standpoint, we have to assess the individual to really understand what's going on. So we can hypothesize and come up with all sorts of theories in terms of what exactly was going on with him, but unless I have Mr. Dorner in front of me, I can't necessarily formulate any true results based on data. But what I will say, and this is piggybacking on, this is Dr. Lewis's point about emotional intelligence. He obviously could have handled the situation differently. Now, do I think that if you are treated wrongly that you should become complacent and accept it? Hell no. And I think that that goes for our people in general. Obviously, we have been wrong historically throughout time, so there needs to be a venue for us to communicate our issues and hope to get some resolution. Now, specifically with Mr. Dorner, You know, I would have liked to have seen him communicate his issues in a different capacity, and you know, he can get all wild and crazy and have a nice form where you're yelling and screaming and telling people exactly what you feel. That's different than going out and killing other police officers who look like the people who wronged you. So that's just kind of my thought, and from my perspective is he likely had some valid concerns. Okay, now if he was able to use his emotional intelligence, maybe he could have stepped back and figured, in what venues can I best communicate this anger and these issues so that I can actually be heard. That's kind of where I'm coming from, but I do want to make it clear that I don't see the resolution to that, him just accepting being wronged, if that makes sense.
To me, that individual was a despicable individual that was running around killing people for nothing. None of the people that he killed had anything to do with what happened to him. He was just a despicable individual. He may have been ill. He may have suffered some psychiatric illness. He might not have. But in my opinion, he's just a despicable individual.
I'll say a couple things. I don't want to talk about Chris Dorner. I want to talk about the system. And I don't want to talk specifically about Chris Dorner's acts, because it wasn't so much him shooting people that we need to focus on. Granted, it was a tragedy, and no one should ever solve any problem using violence. And he did try to go the complacent route by following protocol. And he felt as if he hit a brick wall, and he did not do it correctly, right, and solve the problem correctly. But the issue with the system, and to address your question fully, Vanessa, around rage versus complacency and what's more dangerous, I think they're both equally dangerous. And complacency in this particular situation is, again, I think, focusing and blaming Chris Dorner. I think oftentimes we forget that people of color, as one person, whatever you do sometimes, unfortunately, sticks on the rest of us. And it's not by choice, and it is not a perfect part of our society or our culture, but when we do it to each other, it gets even worse, and it perpetuates those stereotypes, and it adds to that complacency. And so I'd like us to address maybe what it was in the system that Chris was trying to bring out, so that we can really look at, well, what are the problems, right, that he was trying to address in the LAPD. And from what I know, it was police brutality.
I got a quick question, or statement. If you bring up Chris Dorner, not saying what he did was right, but isn't it the same of the actions when the two elderly ladies got shot in the truck? They shot the truck without even warning, and then shot the other man, shot up his vehicle without warning. That was the emotional, I don't know, EQ. They acted off fear, whatever, or whatever they acted off of, and they shot the truck without even trying to see who was in the truck. It was two elderly, a 71-year-old and a 40, her daughter, Latino women. Don't look nothing like Chris Dorner. They just opened fire on the truck. So, yeah, because they thought it was him. And it wasn't the make, it wasn't the model. It was a truck, a flatbed truck in the neighborhood that they thought that truck shouldn't have been in. So,
They didn't look like Chris Dorner.
No, they didn't, but do we give them a pass?
So does someone want to, he said, do you give them a pass?
Well, I will speak from a law enforcement perspective. The law enforcement community will not give that a pass. Actually, if you take a look at that, if in the performance of your duty you violate laws, you can be subject to the criminal penalties just like anybody else. We've had officers down at the Oakland Police Department that have shot and killed people. We've had, they go through what's known as a criminal investigation as well. They're sequestered in a room just like any other suspect that we would have, because what we're investigating is a crime. It's a crime to shoot somebody without justification unless if you're not defending your life or the life of somebody else. So, long story short, what I saw of that, I feel very bad. I feel saddened by what the officers did, and it's inexcusable that you would shoot at a vehicle that contained two women that were simply delivering newspapers. And from what I can recall of that incident, The vehicle was shot from the rear. One of the ladies in the car was wounded in the back, I think, multiple times. So I don't see any justification for it. I don't. And I think that if things are held to the standard as I know them to be, you'll probably be hearing in the paper about those officers facing charges.
That was my question.
Yes, okay, Jody.
I just wanted to say one thing. I heard the correlation, the historical correlation, or perhaps connection to the great prophet Nathaniel Turner. There may be some correlations, but I think they would be less philosophical and less socially motivated than the other. One, Nathaniel Turner, 1831, led a revolution with a cause. His cause was the liberation of his people from the hypocrisy of enslavement. He felt it was his ordained position to, by any means necessary, if you will, liberate black folks from this system of enslavement. Now, we might get caught up in the misuse of violence. I think that particular instance that we brought up is a case, if I may quote the great Malcolm X, the chickens coming home to roost. And when we look at this instance of violence, I would also like to draw from the great psychologist and Martinican scholar Frantz Fanon. Frantz Fanon said, and this is in support of Nathaniel Turner's historical 1831 revolution, he says, if the master's hands are dirty, why must mine be clean? That's Frantz Fanon.
Okay. Well, I lost my trend of thought. I was going to add to it. Frequently, I have a number of students that do have strong feelings against the police department. So it may be a surprise to you to know that they have a process. But I think it is the view of many people in the black community that the police don't pay the same price as somebody else would. There is that code of silence. And so then it becomes us against them. Not sure who the them is. And so over the years since I've been here, many years I've been here, I've heard students make some of the same observations and complaints. But I have to say, I've never been, even though I've never been mistreated or had bad experiences with the Oakland Police Department, I fondly told my students, I was brought up in the area where in the time period in elementary school, the police are your friends. And you know, when there's trouble, you go to the police. I'm not sure what people are being, taught today. I see some people in my age range that maybe they were taught the same thing because a policeman would come in the classroom and, again, it was the police are your friends. So I know that there are variations on that. But anyway, so the Dahmer case is just another extreme of it. Would we like, does a panel member want to go to another area here? Okay, getting upset there. So did the black family, we have other medical issues. We have Stop the Violence. Did you want to, Dr. Outlaw?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and speak, and I think this loosely is related to what Captain was mentioning a second ago, but I just want to identify one point. I think when it really comes down to it, the composition of the black family has changed immensely over the last couple of generations. Okay, so most of us on this panel may remember our grandparents, there being two parents in the household, and not to say that there aren't cases where there are two parents in the household now, but in my estimation, in terms of a lot of the issues that I see in my clinic, at least part of the reason is due to the fact that there's a single mother in the house, not a lot of income coming in, and when it comes down to disciplining African American males, for example, that's not always the best scenario. So my thoughts are that, not only Chris Dorner, but just violence in the black community in general, one of the major reasons behind that is based on the breaking down of the black family as a unit, okay? So we, as a people, we gained our strength from the family unit. And now we are at a place right now where that is so rare that you have two parents in the household, that it's posing lots of issues for us. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, but I just wanted to throw that out there and make the point that the family unit doesn't look the same as what it did just a couple generations ago, and that is one of many factors that are involved in kind of our current state of affairs.
And with that, one of the reasons Dr. Lewis is also our guest is because we live in a different time, a different age, and some of our young people look at some of your entertainers who've had a lot of work done on their bodies. And so either you're putting something in and changing it, or you're sucking out some of the fat. And so the plastic surgeon can, Dr. Lewis can explain some of the ramifications of that, and maybe what some of the latest trends are. I guess if the clients are primarily women, who do we want to look like? Who do African American people want to look like? And which is good from an African American, the psychologist can probably also add to that as well. Dr. Lewis.
I'll talk then a little bit about cosmetic surgery. Basically, let me start just with liposuction. You do not lose weight with liposuction. It is not a diet. All liposuction can do is to smooth out the contours. And if you want to lose weight, you have to do it the hard way, unfortunately, which is to diet and exercise, and you need to do both of them. I recently read something that said, if you eat just 50 calories a day more than what your body needs, that you actually will, by the end of a year, be 5 pounds heavier. So that's something that you have to think about. And you don't have to count calories, you just have to be reasonable and rational. Unfortunately, in this country, we've gone to more and more supersizing everything. So most Americans, and I noticed this with my patients, and I closed my practice and retired 10 years ago, that they didn't know what a portion size was. You know, a portion size of a piece of chicken is 3 to 4 ounces. That's, if you take a chicken breast is just 1/2 of the side of the chicken. It's just 1/2 of the breast, actually. You cut that in half. That's 3 to 4 ounces. And that people really have no idea what a portion is. A portion of rice is an ice cream scoop. That's a portion of rice. So what you're now eating, most of you, is 3 times what a portion is. That's usually what an American plate is like. It's 3 times of a portion. And many Americans, even though here we live in California, you got lots of vegetables available. Most Americans don't eat very many vegetables. So, I mean, that's one of the things that you have to look at. If you want to have liposuction, you only want to have it to contour what's already there. So if you have, with a lot of women, these little saddlebags on the side of their legs, you can have liposuction for that and it'll smooth you out. It's a question of whether you want to risk during the procedure. And you have to look at the risk versus the benefit. Anytime you have any kind of surgery, even if you have a mole taken off, you have some risk. You can get an infection. You know, the scar can come out and look terrible. You can make keloids. There's all kinds of things that can go wrong. In cosmetic surgery, the complication rate is fairly low. It's usually less than 5%. But you don't want to be one of the 5%, so you need to think very carefully about this kind of stuff. And one of the other things that Ms. Smith had mentioned to me was the idea that she sees so many young girls wanting to have butt lifts. And you need to I know they advertise on TV all the time about this Brazilian butt lift thing. And basically, most black women do not need more butt. So we can forget about that. Besides, the procedures are expensive, they're complicated. If you have a buttock implant put in, you have to be careful sitting. You know, it has to be placed just exactly where it won't cause you any problem. You don't want to have a whole bunch of foreign material injected into your body, like silicone and some of these other things, like things that are injected sometimes into people's face or their lips. Like you see sometimes people in Hollywood, they have lips that are real big, and you don't want to do some of these things. One of the things that, with things like, there are some chemicals that you can put in that aren't a problem. They're usually very high medical grade. They've been approved by the FDA and other agencies. They're very sterile, but you have to be careful who you go to. there's one particular filler that they use a lot of time on faces called Sculptra. And in order to do Sculptra, first of all, the company is so strict about letting anybody have their material that you have to take a training class where they train you how to inject it, or else you can't order it. So you have to have the training class first, and then they will only sell their materials to dermatologists or plastic surgeons and no other specialists, because no other specialist should be doing it. And you know, if you see a cut rate amount, if somebody's gonna do something real cheap for you, you better think about it very carefully, and you know, make sure you check their credentials and see that they actually are qualified to do what they're saying they're gonna do. There are other procedures that you can have done, like breast augmentations. Actually, most of my patients, I did a lot of breast surgery, and most of the breast surgery I did on African American women was primarily reductions, because a lot of African American women are very oversized. That's a reconstructive procedure, and it's covered by insurance. Other procedures, such as breast implants that are enlargements, is not covered by insurance and does cost you money. And again, you have to you look at the risks and the benefits. There are complications to it. If you really feel you absolutely have to have that in your flat chest and you want to do that, then, you know, I can't say much about it. I certainly have done enough of them. But you still have to think about what you're going to do and whether or not it's really, don't look at something on TV and they're advertising it and it's just a fad. You have to not do that, you know. There are some times when it's not a bad idea to go ahead and have cosmetic surgery. And usually it's somebody who's, let's say you're older, you're wrinkled up, you want to get a promotion, but you look too old. And so the only way you're ever going to get the promotion is if you look young enough to compete with these 3 other young kids over here, you know, that kind of thing. Other than that, there's not, you know, unless you really have something that you absolutely feel like you absolutely have to have, that you're going to die without it. You have to really think very carefully before you have some of these procedures.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes. Yes.
I wanted to comment just on that just for a moment. I want to pose a question to the audience. And the question is, have you been fooled? And when you really think about the psychological effects of what our society has attempted to do, society has attempted to say that the African American figure, what we look like, what we sound like, is bad. But I find it really interesting that we have tanning salons now. So you have tanning salons where, you know, people want to get darker. You have collagen implants where lips get bigger. You have butt implants. All these different things appear to align with what the African American looks like anyway. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I think it's really interesting that, you know, society they really have done a good job at it, at making us think that we are lesser of people when we see other ethnicities attempting to imitate us.
Can I say something else in regards to that? It's not only imitating in certain body areas, but if you think about it, Black people from this country have given the world music. We've given the world music and entertainment and joy. And that's not a small thing. I mean, no other group has done that. And that's really a very important thing.
I would also like to ask you young people to start thinking about what you're doing here as students, because when you get through here and whenever you get your degree, somebody's going to ask you, what can you do? And that's the question you have to answer. You can say, oh, I went to college. Yeah, but what can you do? Oh, I graduated. Yeah, but what can you do? I have a degree in this, that, and other, but what can you do? You need to start thinking about that now as you travel this path towards your degree. Make sure that as you travel this path, that you can say you can do something at the end. Might be teaching. Maybe it's research. Whatever it is, you got to be able to answer that question.
And another area that we just touched upon with violence prevention, far too often I've had students who've given examples. When you see violence taking place in your community, what do you do? And most people say they won't get involved. They will back off. Again, I was brought up in a different era. I don't mind speaking to people. Now, I'm not stupid, so I'm not going to go up in the middle of something and plat myself and tell them to stop fighting. But you see it early on. You're brought up with it. When parents tell their kids, don't you let anybody hit you, you better go out there and fight them back. You know, and that's part of the black community. Don't let anybody punk you. These are some of the expressions that I hear. And somehow or another we think that that's being, you know, for young men being a man, or for being a woman, you know, you're going to become a beast, all of these things. So you got, and this is what some of you live with.
I won't have specific recommendations. If A, B, and C happens, this is what you do. Why I'm up here listed as violence prevention is because I was the lead faculty member for the Certificate of Proficiency in Violence Prevention here at the College of Alameda. And a part of what we're hoping happens when students leave here is that they'll have the skills not only from the degree or content area that they're interested in, but they'll also be able to have the skills they need to be able to be active agents in violence prevention and peace building in Oakland and whatever community that they live in. When people come up and have, witness instances, right, of violence, if it is safe to do so, meaning there are no weapons involved, right, you use discretion for yourself. Me, not a chance. If I see someone on the street, right, fighting, for example, and if I have the ability to get the attention of someone and say, hey, right, let them know that they're being watched, people run. Have you ever noticed that? If you see someone looks like they're trying to get to someone's car or steal something, if they notice that someone's watching, they'll stop doing it. Oftentimes, sometimes they don't, right, and they need extra love. But those of us who still have a little shame left, right, and still do care about our community, right, we can count on that to some degree. People oftentimes don't steal or commit acts of violence because they hate you or because they hate the community. It's a part of self-hate, right? And so how I feel like we can prevent violence and look at solving violence, right, is not so much looking at, well, how can we stop the individual acts? We have to build community with one another, and if we want people to be accountable to each other. We can't depend on the Oakland Police Department only, right? We need to also be our own community policing agents. Not so much so that we can call the cops on each other and say, you need to go to jail, but to say, hey, why are you acting crazy? I'm gonna come to your house. Even if you don't have your parents there, I'm gonna come to your house, we're gonna talk. We're gonna hold you accountable for your actions or your inaction, right? Because both are equally violent.